The Trump administration plans to remove Syria from a list of state sponsors of terrorism. Other countries are also expanding ties with the interim government. But recent attacks have raised security concerns. Is Syria stable enough to engage with the world? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Nyberg. It's now a year and a half since the Assad regime was overthrown in Syria. Interim President Ahmed Sharaa has visited countries in the region as well as the US as his transitional government tries to bring Syria out of diplomatic and economic isolation. Washington has lifted sanctions and now plans to remove Damascus from a list of state sponsors of terrorism, a designation that dates back to 1979. But security challenges continue, the latest being a pair of attacks in the capital this month. And there's pressure from Israel, which has occupied additional territory in the southwest of Syria since the Assad regime was deposed. We'll discuss all of this with our guests, but first, here's a report from Felix Nyberg.
Explosions rattled through the heart of the Syrian capital during a visit by French President Emmanuel Macron. The attack in Damascus on Tuesday is the latest reminder that the overthrow of the Assad regime in late 2024 has not resolved the security situation. Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, says the attacks were meant to destabilize the country.
There are many people who are harmed by Syria's current success, and perhaps they find it difficult to accept this progress. These are people who sought to ruin and destroy our country and homeland. Therefore, certain security measures may be taken.
Authorities say since then, they have seized explosive materials during security sweeps, which they say were also used in an attack at a cafe last week. Several people were killed at the popular coffee shop near the main court complex. The pair of attacks have left Syria's transitional government rushing to secure the capital. Officials say they are trying to thwart internal security threats without losing public confidence after Tuesday's attack.
The second blast came around 5 minutes after the police gathered at the scene of the first explosion. This incident is damaging the country's economy, especially as it coincides with the visit of the French president.
But Syria is facing security challenges on multiple fronts. Analysts say ISIL sleeper cells remain active, though the group no longer holds significant territory. And in southern Syria, since Assad's fall, Israeli forces have been crossing the border, occupying more land and harassing local Syrian communities. The interim government has struggled to integrate former rebels and Assad regime soldiers into a unified army. But Sharaa's government is receiving support from other quarters. Speaking at the NATO summit, US President Donald Trump said Washington plans to remove Syria from its list of state sponsors of terror, an announcement Damascus welcomes as it seeks to rejoin the international community. Trump has also suggested Syria could join efforts to disarm Hezbollah in neighboring Lebanon. But Sharaa has denied that, perhaps more keen to focus on the problems at home. Felix Nyberg, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Now let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Bonn in Germany is Omar Abu Laila, a political and Syrian affairs analyst. Also from Bangor in the U.S. state of Maine, Robert Ford, a former U.S. ambassador to Syria. And from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, Khaled Batarfi, a political and Saudi affairs analyst. Thank you all for joining us today on Inside Story. Omar Abu Laila, we've just had these explosions in Damascus. How big are Ahmed al-Sharaa's security problems at home right now?
Thank you so much for having me. Actually, this is something we all expected, but we don't say it's like in a big escalation happened in the country, especially after 19 months of the liberation after the fall of Assad regime. What happened, it was not kind of escalating the situation more than it's a message, political message from different or multiple of cells, including defunct regime cells, ISIS cells, other cells. We don't know yet who is behind this attack or this explosion. But what was good and clear from the international community, including President Macron, immediately he proved that the position of France and the international community, we stand with the Syrian government, and we don't let this kind of escalation, or what do you call it, it's going to confuse us, or it's going to take us back steps from the new Syrian government or what happened after the fall of Assad regime. So it was a clear message from Macron immediately after he heard about it, despite it was so far, it was like not in the area. And President Ahmed Sharaa also, he wrote something about this clearly. The stability of the security in the region, Syria, is the stability of the region entirely. I'm talking about Syria. And the international community now believes that we have and we must, and there's no other solution more than to support Syria and support the government, because when Syria is stable, other countries are also stable.
But Omar, was there a message from the perpetrators, even though we don't know who they were? What were they trying to say with these explosions?
They tried, very good question, actually. They tried to push back some of these huge, big countries, including France, not to come and invest in Syria, not to come and support the Syrian government, not to come and make Syria great again, let's call it, okay? They sent many messages in what happened in Damascus. So, but these messages, like just from the past, it's not exist anymore, because now we see the neighbor countries, Arab countries, Gulf countries, Turkey, Europe countries, the United States as well, supporting strongly the Syrian government and the Syrians. And they believe in the Syrian government now because they have, or there's no other solution except to support them. So these cells, it's like just a matter of time. The security institutions in Syria have proven for the past 19 months how they control the country from the east to the north to the west to other area in Syria. So these cells, you could see this kind of explosions happening in any country, not only in Syria. That's why I don't see it as like a big deal or a big issue.
Robert Ford, you were the U.S. ambassador in Syria during those first brutal years of Assad's crackdown, first in Syria, then in Washington. Fast forward to today, you've got these explosions now happening in Damascus. What's your assessment of the current security situation in Syria right now?
Well, I think Omar is generally right that the security situation in general is under control. But of course, there have been multiple security incidents. And so security is not as good as some other countries in the region, or say in European countries. And that will have an effect on, for example, private sector business investment, could delay some investments. But it is far, far, far better than it was during the years of the Civil War. And I think over time, the security situation is gradually improving. For example, there are fewer attacks claimed by the Islamic State, Daesh, in central and eastern Syria than there were 9, 10, 11 months ago. But there will probably still be additional security incidents of some extent.
Ambassador, how difficult is this balancing act of making sure that you limit the security threats while not suffocating the openness in the country? Of course, you having been there firsthand, witnessing Assad's way of dealing with threats in his country.
Well, of course, the way that the Assad regime handled internal security is not a model to be followed. It's exactly the opposite. And it is, of course, a challenge in any society, whether that be Syria or countries in the West, Europe and North America, balancing civil liberties to security interests. We even have that issue here in politics in the United States right now. So what I would say is that the Sharaa government does have a challenge of slowly but surely bringing some of the more militant elements of the former Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the former HTS, into the security forces, doing it gradually, doing it safely, and thereby constraining them. At the same time, it deals with former regime, Assad regime cells that are still operating. There have been arms shipments discovered in Syria, apparently on their way to Hezbollah, so that there's an Iranian Hezbollah angle still. And as I mentioned, there are still some cells of ISIS here and there. And so it's a challenge to balance all of these things.
Khaled Batarfi, the view from Saudi Arabia, where you are, in terms of the stability and the fragility of Syria right now, what's the thinking there?
Our thinking is that we lost Syria for so many ages, and now it's returning back to the Arab and Muslim circle, and we don't want to lose it again. It was part of the bridge between Tehran and Beirut, and now it's not. It cut that bridge in half, and it is very difficult now for Iran to resupply Hezbollah, for example, or for the militia in Iraq to connect with the militia in Syria, previous Syria, or in Lebanon. So that's a plus that we want to lose, and we will not allow militias that supported by Iran, like Daesh or Hezbollah or the remnant of the older regime, to disturb that peace. And of course, there's some people who really need to cut off Syria, like the Druze, for example, and they are supported by Israel. And Israel has no interest in the stability of Syria, unfortunately. But fortunately, there's America and the European Union and Turkey and the Arab Gulf and others who would like to support Syria and make it able to unify the country and get rid of these militias everywhere and bring in investment and displaced people and all, and rebuild the country again.
Of course, Syria has a unique geographic position, sort of as a crossroads between the Gulf, between Turkey, Iraq, the Mediterranean, and that can both serve as an economic incentive, transporting oil, for example, through Syria, but also as a diplomatic tool for integrating into the wider region. Do you see that in Saudi Arabia, Khalid, that Syria is now sort of coming back into the region and being a part of the regional diplomatic fabric?
Yes, so far so good. I mean, in comparison, as Mr. Robert Ford said, now it's much, much better, even much better than 9 or 10 months ago. So things are going smoothly towards stability, and thanks to the American administration for its support, for the also the European Union. The Macron visit, for example, showed how much the world wants Syria to return to even better than ever than the past, and be a country that concentrate on development and cooperation with the others. And the point you mentioned is very important. It is in the crossroad of east and west and north and south, and there are plans for example, for a railroad going from Saudi Arabia to Europe through Syria, or a pipeline, for example, or fiber optics cable. There are many plans, and for these plans to happen, we need stability, we need peace. And I hope America could force Israel to understand that Of course, Israel doesn't want that because they want everything to go through Israel to the Mediterranean, and they have no interest in stability in any Arab country, let alone a neighboring country like Syria. So there is challenges ahead, of course, but so far so good, I believe.
Omar, this openness both towards the wider region, but of course the West as well, with Sharaa speaking at the UN, going to Washington, visiting Donald Trump, could that be also creating problems at home with his former supporters within HTS, for example, or those people who are still loyal to the former regime, this warming to the West? Is that only a good thing, do you think? Or is that also, does it create problems with people who just don't like that?
Very good question. Actually, when you see President Ahmed welcome in the United States, at the UN, in Germany, Zelensky visiting Syria or visit Syria, Macron visit Syria, President Donald Trump repeated for many times, this government, he means the Syrian government, it's the only government we must, all international community support it. There is no other solution, to be honest with you. To deal with a strong man came from the field, such Ahmed Sharaa, it's the only thing that you have to control this important country such Syria, especially how it's important between many, as Mr. Khaled mentioned, how this geographic place or country is important for, or even for the neighbors. The stability of Syria, it's the title or the most important thing for the international community. I know many other countries, they still late not engaged in the new Syria. I understand that. But I think like Ahmed Sharaa, in 2 days, he met with Macron in Damascus. Next day, he was in Turkey, met with President Erdogan, and then with Trump, with the other NATO allies. So this is like no other excuse for the other countries to engage in Syria. That's the simple and the easy answer for all of them. You can't be late because Syria is the only solution for the international community now in the middle of this entire or in this international conflict, especially after the war against Iran between the Americans, Israel from one side against Iran. Syria now is the new direction of the international community, and that's why they need to support and stand with it. That's the thing Trump and other international leaders repeated for many times.
Ambassador Ford, there seems to be a lot of warming up as well from the White House towards Syria and Ahmed Sharaa. You've got Donald Trump lifting sanctions, saying that he's going to remove Syria from that list of state sponsors of terrorism. He even invited Sharaa to the White House. But, you left the position as ambassador because you thought that the U.S. was not putting enough pressure on the former regime. Do you think that the U.S. is making now the same mistake again, given Sharaa's history, affiliated to Al-Qaeda, the head of the HTS group? Should the U.S. put more pressure instead of just welcoming him in with open arms?
Well, to be honest, it was my initiative to put the HTS predecessor organization, which was called the Nusra Front. It was my initiative to put the Nusra Front on the terrorism list in December of 2012. And I have met with Sharaa 3 different times, and so here's what I think. I think he is not interested in exporting terrorism out of Syria, and in fact, in the last 10 years, we've seen no evidence that he has done so. With respect to getting concessions from Sharaa on issues of concern to the United States, first, and most importantly, I think from the point of view of Washington, Sharaa has broken with Iran and with Hezbollah. And so, in a sense, it has moved out of the Iranian camp and into either a more neutral or even in some cases, Macron, Trump visits Erdogan, into a more Western camp, which Washington strongly welcomes. Should we be seeking more from Sharaa? Yes, of course, but we should be seeking more from every country we deal with. That's the nature of international politics. I think, and what I have said here in the United States is we need to judge Sharaa by what he does. So, for example, we are concerned about civil rights in Syria. Let's see what they're doing. I take, for example, as an important step that they have put Syrian government security officers on trial publicly for human rights violations, atrocities, in Latakia province in March of 2025, and more recently in Soweto province last summer in June and July of 2025. Those are important steps. Frankly, I cannot think of another country in the Middle East, including Israel, that has put its own security forces personnel on public trial for human rights violations. Is Sharaa a perfect Democrat? Absolutely not. System is very much focused on centralizing power in the presidency, but it is a transition period, and it is important, therefore, to see what other elements of Syrian society, non-government organizations, the business sector, academics, the universities. Syria is a very rich, diversified society. To see
But
their
Ambassador, let me jump in there
inputs.
quickly. Has Sharaa only
Please.
changed outfit, or has he actually changed ideology?
I think he is a pragmatic man who used Islamist militancy as a way to mobilize fighters to fight Assad and climb to the top in the Syrian political hierarchy. But I do not think he is a jihadi. So I do not think he's changed clothes. He's wearing suits now instead of combat fatigues. But I don't think it was ever his goal to launch attacks against targets in, say, Europe or elsewhere in the Middle East or in North America. I don't think that was ever his goal.
Khaled Batarfi, you've mentioned Israel several times here. Do you think that Saudi Arabia, your country, could they do more to affect the United States, to put more pressure on Israel to back off from the Syrian territory to make sure that they're not conducting these strikes and incursions into Syria?
I'm sure they do. And I'm sure other Arab countries and Turkey and even European countries are putting that pressure. What we are doing now is we are helping this new regime to hold the country together and to lead it into the future with investment, with good cooperation with all the neighbors and all the world, with human rights rules and everything. So what Israel is doing is destabilizing for no reason. I don't think they even care to present a reason for their incursions or their destabilization. And it would be easier now for America to put pressure on Netanyahu, especially that he is destabilizing the whole region, not just Syria. I mean, in Lebanon, for example, is still a force of destabilization in that small country. And I believe it's about time that the whole world unite together to support all forces for peace and stability in the region.
Khaled, is Ahmed al-Sharaa the right man at the right time to lead Syria into the next chapter of that country?
We are not looking at al-Sharaa or that situation in Syria as personalities, supporting personality. We are supporting politics. We are supporting direction. We are supporting new government, a new country. That's what we are doing. And Sharaa or his government, as long as they are doing the right thing, fighting terrorism, for example, unifying the countries, using all the tools available for rebuilding and stability and helping and returning the displaced people. We are supporting that, of course.
Omar, if Donald Trump's promise to remove Syria from that list of state sponsors of terrorism, if that becomes a reality, what would that mean for Syria?
It's actually a strategic decision made by President Trump after lifting sanctions, with the great support from Arab countries, including Saudi, also with Turkey. Now we are moving toward, I think, to a different level of rebuilding the new state of Syria. Now you need to bring all the businessmen, companies, other countries who still late not invest or engage in the new Syria. This is the time exactly how the Syrian foreign policy had made this success in the past 19 months. And now we are moving toward a different level of this country, the country that the Syrians deserve to have change the image of the Syria that Bashar Al Assad, his regime, for many years were giving it negatively to the other countries.
Ambassador Ford, a final question to you. Back in the Assad days, you described threats to American national security coming from Syria. Have those threats gone away now?
I think they have largely gone away, almost entirely. There is still an ISIS presence in parts of the country, but the Syrian government is confronting those threats in a tough way, in a good way. Syria does not pose the same kind of risk to American national security with respect to, for example, weapons of mass destruction. The chemical weapons program has been dismantled, for example. The cooperation with Hezbollah that threatened regional stability, Israel, that also has gone away. And so, as I said, Syria really has moved from an Iranian axis of resistance camp more towards a neutral stance, but I think with at least one step firmly in the Western camp. That's the significance of Sharaa going to the Oval Office, if you can imagine, and receiving the French president in Damascus this week.
I want to say thank you to all three of you. It was a true pleasure speaking to you today and really interesting to hear your insights into this story. Joining us from Bonn in Germany, Omar Abu Laila, also from Bangor in the US state of Maine, Robert Ford, and Khaled Batarfi, live for us from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Thank you to all three. And thank you so much for watching. You can watch the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For now, that's it from me, Per Nyberg, and the whole team here. Al Jazeera's coverage continues in just a moment. Stay with us.